We were talking about that hand sanitizer. It is strong.
Yeah. Well, that's sanitizing inside. I'm all for that.
All right, I think we're ready. You ready to go?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay.
Jess.
Yeah, so, I mean, to put it bluntly, there's no scenario in the world where we can agree to most of what was just offered. We're not interested in negotiating for next year. We're talking about dollars this year for raises this year. The part that irks us the most here is that we have been negotiating in good faith under a construct of there are some things that could have happened this year, and if they did, you couldn't help. If they didn't, the presumption would have been that you could. And now that it seems that most of those things have fallen the wayside, now there's a whole new list of things. So it seems like, and I should try to find an apt analogy, it seems like each of our proposals was a bet. Your bet was a conservative one that the state was going to take a ton of money from you and you couldn't pay for raises. Our bet was they weren't going to do as bad a job to you, and if that came to be, you could afford raises. It appears like we were working under a very simple construct, and because it didn't turn out the way you guys had expected it, you've abandoned that construct and basically are welching on the bet. And I don't mean that to be offensive, but
Well, it is.
well, that's how I feel.
Well,
You set a list
I'll
of
speak to you for a
conditions,
second.
they almost exclusively fell apart, which is a good thing, because those conditions falling apart means that you didn't lose 30 or 60 or 100 million. There was a 5-scenario matrix put together back in May and
It was
June.
originally 6.
No,
It was 6. We took one off the table.
a matrix that Mr. Burke put together showing 5 scenarios, projections back in May and June of what could happen to us. This is prior to negotiations. It was part of one of his presentations. It's a very nice matrix. I dug it up this morning at 6:30 in bed. And it laid out scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with varying and increasing degrees of financial hardship to the district. And scenario 1, the green scenario, involved the district basically losing no money this year. It was all about this year. It wasn't about hypothetical 22 and 23 outcomes. And we'll be happy to provide you that as a reference. It's your matrix, and we'll bring it up next meeting because we're prepared to make one final offer before having to walk down, the direction we don't want to go, but we absolutely are committed to if we can't come to an agreement. But you have this 5-scenario matrix, and we are undeniably, based on your own descriptions of those scenarios, in the best scenario. We are in the green zone, not the yellow, not the orange, not the red, or whatever other color is in there. So we just can't. We feel like, this is a continuation of a willingness to be indifferent when it need not occur towards your employees. And we were operating under your construct in this negotiation by cutting our proposal in half and acknowledging that financial hardship should and would limit what you were capable of doing. Our response to your offer reflects that, because we put the 1.8% guaranteed and the up to 2% contingent on economic indicators that were subject to our negotiations. And now, because those indicators have fallen the wayside, now there are a whole new slew of contingency language caveats that almost exclusively take place next year, or in the case of the charter school lawsuit, which was in there before, might not be settled for 2 years. So I don't even know how that one would work, because what are we going to do? Agree to a raise this year that wouldn't be paid for 2 years? I'll stop rambling, but
Well,
We will come back. We will come back for one more meeting, and we will make our final proposal, and that's for you and the board to chew on, and if that doesn't work out, then it's going where everyone expects it to go.
Well, first off, I think it's offensive to say that we're welching on a bet, first off. Secondly, we had 6 things that we were afraid or thought might come to pass that would put us in a financial hole. That is why you see the language you do. We met with the board. The board received hundreds of emails from teachers asking for a 3.5% increase, which we have given you. The board asked for this language to be included because we need you to understand that our goal is to save jobs. Now, the way you spun this of that we're not giving you the money, no, we are giving you the money. The raises would be retroactive to July 1. That's what the language in this proposal says. So they would get the 3.5, those 3.5 or 47.5 retroactive to July 1. The caveat language is, if these things happen, that the parties agree that we're going to have to make some cuts. We don't want to cut jobs, but we're going to have to find money wherever we can, and part of that would be looking at contracts for things that don't affect the majority of the employees, such as the additional period supplement. That, by cutting that in half, is a $10 million savings. How many jobs is that? How many jobs can we save with $10 million? The 94, going from 96 duty days, 196 to 194, that's another $10 million. So we're going to be looking next year, and that was one of the things the board wanted to make very clear, that if those things come to pass, and we're hoping they don't, we really hope they don't. We hope that there's this federal stimulus that comes in and saves the day. But if it doesn't, we're going to save jobs, is what we're going to do. And we're going to have to find ways to make that money up somewhere so that we're not laying off hundreds and hundreds of people. So to spin it in such a way that we're somehow not bargaining in faith is inappropriate at best. And I know Mr. Burke would like to speak.
I just wanted to point out, well, right, so we had 6 conditions we were worried about, and the executive order that came out from the governor was no doubt good news, right? That kind of gave us a reprieve for the current year, but it's a temporary reprieve. Our enrollment's still down over 7,000 kids. That alone is a major budget problem, and there's absolutely no expectation that when we go to next school year, our funding's going to reset based on the actual enrollment. So that we haven't really solved that problem yet. The state, the economy has bounced back better than I initially thought. That's true. But there's still a projected shortfall in the state budget next year. It's at least $2 billion. I mean, that will impact K-12 education. The new leadership of the Senate and the House have indicated that what was done this year to prop up the state budget was really the one-time infusion of federal CARES Act dollars, and that they can't go forward with that for next year, that they have to return structural balance to their own budget, and they have their own credit rating agencies that monitor them, and they have said they're committed to making the tough decisions. And they said basically less revenue means less government, and less government means budget cuts. So the board, we had a very lengthy discussion with the board on Wednesday, and the board is incredibly supportive of the teachers, and they recognize that this year's been like no other, and they appreciate the hard work. They understand the dilemma with the veterans. They were opposed to the structure of what the state did with the classroom teacher money that completely weighted it on the side of the beginning teacher. So they are, they understand the challenge here, and they understand what you guys are trying to accomplish. And so they, I shared with them the whole financial forecast, and the good and the bad. And they were still kind of concerned about heading into next year. And there is we are basically pinning a lot of our hopes on the federal stimulus, another round. And the talks are going on right now in Washington. It's kind of hard to tell right now what to expect. The board, is concerned about going into next year. They were asking me, if this comes to pass, what kind of reductions would we be looking at? What does that mean in terms of staffing and all those things? And, it's serious. So they actually suggested that bring to these, bring these additional language to accompany the 3.5. Ms. Evans and I here today have the authority. We cautioned the board that said, that we don't think CTA is going to probably react well. But it was important that I think, show you where we're coming from and that the budget concerns have not been fully alleviated, that we are still in serious times. We are in this pandemic. We've got 10.7 million unemployed people across the country. It's just, we're not out of the woods by any stretch. And like I said, the declining enrollment, the state shortfall, the FRS increase, it's $15.5 million this year. It's likely going to be another $15.5 million next year. And we have a lot of students in need. First, we got students we have to re-engage, and then we've got students that need a lot of academic support because they're falling behind and suffering. So there's going to be additional cost and strain on the budget just to provide services for kids. But what we can do now, right, Ms. Evans, is we can offer you the 3.5% and scratch all the strings, and we'll be bargaining again next year. And
Which starts in April.
Yeah, as early as April, and at that point we'll have a good read on what the legislature's doing to us. But going into next year, I want everybody to understand, like, it could be a tough year, and what this raise, if we're able to reach a raise today, which is our hope that we would, it's December 11th. We're getting ready to head into the winter break. It'd be nice to put this to rest. I know, your teachers would probably like to know where they stand financially. This package will provide a raise it's an overall package of 5.4%. When you look at the whole thing, it's $44.5 million. Now, granted, over $30 million of that's coming from the state, about 12 million or so is local money. But 5.42% overall, the minimum of 3.5% raise for veterans, and then, of course, the newer teachers are going to get a raise up to almost 16%. So there's a lot of money here that we could, go to work and start putting get it on the board's agenda as soon as possible, and then get to work and try to get it ratified and get it in the teachers' checks as soon as possible. So anyway, I guess that would be our second offer of the
Right.
day.
So we can offer you without the strings for next year. The 1.7 of the state, 1.8 from the district, and we're done today. Goes to the board on Wednesday night.
So we can't accept that, and the reason why is, to your point about people were asking for the 1.8%, and I've said this, that whether it was board members or you guys, that this is an extremely complex negotiation because of state money and local money and who's getting what. And when they ask for the 1.8%, and we know that was one component of the deal. It wasn't 1.8 and we'll abandon everything else. It was get us to at least 1.8. That's what I told them to do. And that was because before the DOE came out and said, you guys right now are basically going to be held harmless this year, that is all we might have expected to get was the 3.5. But our offer had always included, and everyone in this room knows that, the 1.8 guaranteed up to 2% depending on the contingency language. So while they might have focused on the 1.8 because that was the more realistic and achievable possible outcome prior to the DOE's announcement that they're not taking 30 or 60 million from you, we all know that was certainly not what we were asking for, because if that's what we were asking for, we would take your offer on the table, which we're not, or we would have submitted just 1.8 and let's call it a day last time to try to get out of it. So, it's complex, and it was easier for them to focus on the more realistic thing at the time, which has now shifted. And to that effect, we're not necessarily, and we've never said that, we're demanding the top line of our local and state combination. So we're open to a further discussion. But last time we negotiated, we kind of indicated that 1.8, was a line in the sand, which meant that was the least we would be willing to accept And then when the DOE made clear that they're not taking your money and those caveats that were in your contingency language have fallen the wayside, to us that opened up the door to start talking about the second half of our proposal, which has been on the table since day one. So just to clarify that, I want to say we understand your concerns, but I don't fully, because, and you might be talking about layoffs from other bargaining units, but.
No, sir.
So we turn 1,000 positions a year. There's 1,000 new hires in a regular year. So you might have to not staff vacant positions at the end of this year going into next year, but there is not a single teacher that would lose their job, because if you have 1,000 vacancies and you decide not to staff 500 of them, that doesn't mean you laid off 500 people, because those people don't exist yet. So maybe I need clarification on that, but if we anticipate normal attrition, 800, 1,000, 1,200 people, whatever it is every year from our bargaining unit, who would get laid off versus you decide not to fill 200, 400, 600 positions?
Well, first, I appreciate you talking about the 1.8 being, the more realistic, as you just said, the more realistic ask.
Prior to the DOE's recent
Well, I
announcement.
understand that. Okay, so 1.8 is the more realistic. Our board feels that they have stretched beyond stretch to get you the 1.8. What I want to make sure that we're all clear, that anybody who watches the video or anybody who is in the room, what you're walking away from is a starting teacher getting a $6,500 raise, going from 41 to 47.5. You're walking away from a 3.5% increase that no one else in the state is getting for everybody. What you're walking away from is the max salary now for teachers under this proposal is $90,000 plus. With the referendum, we're going to have teachers in this district who make six figures, and you're going to walk away from it. That's fine. That's your choice to walk away from it. And we'll certainly get with the board and let them know your position, that you want more.
Okay, well, we'd like to,
Oh, sorry.
I mean, we feel that we're really trying to get the money to our teachers. The state is sitting there with this money. They're going to go back into session with our money still sitting in the bank. And if that's your choice, that's fine. But we really wanted to get the money to our teachers. We feel that they've earned it. We feel they deserve it, and we want to get it to them.
We've looked around the state. Can you show me one district that got 5.5% this year?
Can you show me one district that got 3.5?
I can show you 7 of the largest districts in the state that have settled for less, or a couple more that are in impasse, that settled for far less than we're offering. This, to me, is almost irresponsible. Just because you set a goal of 5.5%, to think that you're going to achieve it by, I guess, just brute force or whatever, we have to acknowledge the financial situation we're in. This executive order it's a 6-month reprieve. It does not solve all our problems. And I can tell you, this offer on the table today, I did not confirm its last, best, and final, but I will do that next week, and we'll see if it's still on the table. But it's, in my opinion, it is not getting any better than this. And we were hoping to get it done today. We came in good faith. We pushed ourselves beyond our comfort point. We tried to listen to the teachers. The board has a full awareness of what this means for them financially, and they are really pinning their future to the prospects of the federal stimulus. So we feel like we have kind of stuck our necks out because it's the right thing to do for the teachers. And if you guys walk away from this, I think it sends a really bad message across this whole district.
well, we do understand you're using the method of attempting to make it appear that we're not operating in the best interest of teachers. In actuality, that's exactly what we're doing, is working in the best interest of teachers. We know that you have the monies to give what we're asking for. What you are doing is saying that we can't negotiate. I mean, 5.5 is what we have on the table at this point. We'll come back with an offer when we come back. That would be, probably different than 5.5. We feel that with the 42 million that you have in reserve, we believe that there's more to add to the 42 million in reserve based on what happened in August and September, number of teachers that are not hired, monies from CARES Act. As a matter of fact, you just got an additional 10 million for COVID from the county. And then, to have $210 million in reserve and say that you can't give us an additional $7 million in increase, I think is just unfair. One of the things that we feel we need to do is to check and make sure that we're doing good faith bargaining. Because, one of the things we did with the 1.8, as Justin said, was, and we made it crystal clear that we were asking for 1.8 only because you said of these concerns you have about what was going to happen in the budget. Now, once those things no longer existed, it would have appeared to me that you would have come back to us and say, well, here's what we're willing to offer you. Now that we've got this reprieve, we do understand that, we won't have to lose 30 million that we had in reserve to pay if we needed to anyway, that we, either in the 42 million for this year's budget or in the 210 million we have in our fund balance. So we could have covered that if that came to be, but we don't have to do that now. So we can give you the additional monies that you're asking for. I think its total is about 18 million. If 18 to 20 million dollars that you would need to, probably come to a settlement. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 24 million. I think, if I think about it right, with the 5.5 total. But again, that was to be negotiated. But you're not even trying to negotiate that with us. You're totally ignoring the fact that we had the 2.0 in there. You never even mentioned it in your presentation.
Mr. Harris, we're not
I'm
ignoring.
talking now.
I
I'm talking.
understand that.
Whoa. You asked me to be quiet.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm going to ask you to do the same thing.
Certainly.
And even swap is no swindle. Okay. So you also said that the board asked you to do certain things. Well, we know the board is not going to ask you about the 6-period supplement. They're not going to ask you about advanced degree supplements because they don't know about that. If that came, from them, it was because it was brought to them by someone. That we know. And then the aspect about cutting jobs. As Justin clearly identified, because of the number of people we hire each year, we more than likely, I can't say absolutely, of course, but more than likely, there won't be any specific jobs lost. There'll just be less people hired. And then there's another part to this whole negotiations process that we have to deal with, and that is with our members. We have to take whatever we come to a settlement with to them to vote to ratify. And one of the things that we would not want to do is to take any kind of a settlement to our members where we did not feel fully that they would agree. That's important to us. And we're not, even with the 24 million being on the table to cover the full 5.5, we don't feel that that's out of the realm of what we have available in our budget. As I said, 42 million already in reserve, plus whatever is added to that, and that could come to as much as $60, $70 million out of this year's budget, just out of savings and other monies that have come in. In addition to that, we say 210 million in reserves, but we just put 27 million in reserves. And so we're not asking to negotiate for next year. You have not agreed to multi-year salary contracts. So why would we agree to a multi-year contract now? Because that's what it would be if you place restrictions on this year.
We took those
for
off the
next
table.
year.
We just took those off the table.
I know,
Theo.
but the idea of doing that is challenging to me. And it's kind of hard for me to remove that from the feelings when you first presented it to me. I do understand, what you said in that regard. Now, as relates to what you're offering us now is 1.8 million. I mean, 1.88%. We're asking for more than that, of course. And we feel that you can give us more than that. We thought you would come with an offer better than that to us, because you knew that our proposal had this second part that we put in there because we felt that there were challenges. And we felt that to be fair to you, that we will allow, that to be considered as a part of our proposal. And so again, I just ask that you consider, our proposal when we come back as one where we're trying to settle. We hope we would settle today. That would have been great. What we also object to, though, is trying to pit us against our members by saying that we're leaving something on the table. We are negotiating a contract for our teachers in good faith. And I think everything we've done and shown in print shows that that's exactly what we've done. We're not trying to prevent anybody from getting anything. And we know that as a part of the ratification process, it's going to be a timely issue. Because if we do a ratification, we can't do a regular vote. We have to get permission from PERC to do it electronically. That's going to take time. And so we want to come to resolution so that we can get money in our teachers' hands. That's our idea. But we don't just accept anything in order to achieve that objective, and that's what we're not doing.
First off, we didn't ignore, first you keep saying like you're bargaining in good faith as if we're not. We're bargaining in good faith. We're coming from different positions. You look for teachers, we look for teachers and then the district as a whole. So we're looking at the forest, not just the trees. But we didn't ignore the 2% you requested. We just disagree with you, Theo. We don't agree that we have the money. It's not fiscally responsible to deficit spend in a pandemic, and that's what you're asking us to do, to take money that's one-time money in a savings account and put it towards a recurring cost with no knowledge of whether the 7,000 plus students that we've lost will ever come back. We were directed to find money in the collective bargaining agreement that we could put you on notice that in negotiations in the future, we're going to have to look at if we have to cut in the budget. We're going to look for small things that we can take rather than large things. We want our employees to still work here. We want to keep the number of employees we have. And whether that's your teachers or all our employees, that's who we have to look out for, is all 20,000 plus employees that we have. So we will schedule another date. It will have to be in January most likely, because we're going to have to go to the board and figure out where their position is. And as Mr. Burke said, we did hear the words last, best, and final at the last board meeting, and I haven't heard that before. They're serious about this. And while you disagree, I would challenge you to find any city or school district that's giving the kind of raises that we've offered. So we will get in touch with you as to when we can set a new date sometime in the new year.
Right.
Have a happy winter break, and we'll see you in 2021.
Well, no, I won't be dismissed like that. Now, what
I'm not dismissing you. I thought we were done.
Okay, no. You made some statements, so I want to respond to those. You talked about what no district has done in this state as it relates to their bargaining. There are some that had a second part like we did, and now that we have this change, they will be going back to the table. We also have some who made decisions already prior to this taking place, so therefore they can't come back. So, to say that nothing is better in the state is not the full story. The rest of the story is they exist because of certain circumstances. Either they're not yet, or they can't because they've closed bargaining. Listen, we understand that, it would be great to settle a contract and not have to, give the raises that we're asking. All we're asking you to do is look at where you are, look at what we're asking, where can we come to some positive resolve? We're saying we want 1.8. I think the other is 3.8. So where can we come, together in there? And that's, really where we are, because the thing that concerns me is that when you talk about the second part of our offer, that you speak about it as if it is absolute. And we did not make that part of our offer an absolute.
I understand that.
Okay, all right.
But I need you to understand that we are tapped out at this point. Just to be,
Well, and,
but we're going to take it to the board. Like I said, we can't go any further. This was all we had to offer. The board felt this was a good offer. You've rejected it. That's fine. We will schedule another meeting in January.
To your question about any municipalities that might have given comparable raises, I can say that 2 weeks ago, the city of Boynton Beach voted to give 2.5% raises, locally funded raises, to SEIU and blue and white collar employees, and our fire and PD have step scales. So in the city of Boynton Beach, whether by contract or by a recent board vote, we gave 2.5 to whatever the step scales afford PD and fire. So yes, there is at least one city that I'm aware of that funded in the range what we're looking for.
Well, they gave a
So-
2.5.
And I wouldn't, I mean, school districts and cities don't really compare in terms of the city's primary revenue is ad valorem. We have a good portion of ad valorem, and that's been the most stable piece so far, although the commercial property is going to probably start dragging it down. And we don't expect to see the growth. We were growing 5% a year in property values. I think that's going to be dropped to about 1% next year. But we are all dependent on sales tax, and sales tax is what's been upended by the pandemic. And it's not as grave as we first feared, but it's still significant enough to trigger state budget cuts next year. And when we manage the finances of the district, we don't do it 6 months at a time. We have to, the district's been in place for 100+ years. We're the largest employer in the county. It's over a $3 billion budget, and we have to make sure we remain solvent. And the decisions that are made at the bargaining table are the biggest budget decisions we make. And like Ms. Evans said very well, those reserves have been accumulated with one-time money. And you guys also, when you talk about the reserves, the 210 million fund balance last year, that includes the 27 million we saved from the schools being shut down. And then we reallocated that this year into that $42 million reserve. Again, we were hoping to get a deal today. If, our last bargaining session, I felt like, and that, granted, it was before the executive order, but it seemed like we were getting to try to just zero in on the 1.8, trying to get to 3.5, and we've worked to do that. We're not going to agree that we can afford more, because we look at the whole picture, and as much as I'm appreciative of the executive order, it has just kind of postponed the impact that we're going to feel when we reset all of our budget allocations to reflect 5,000 to 7,000 fewer students next year. And, and we're going to watch the stimulus. So, I mean, finally, this is the best offer of any large district or any district I can find. The only thing that came close was Pinellas County. They had, in recent years, they had raised their starting teacher salary to $45,000. So when they got the state money, they were able to provide their veteran teachers a 3.45%. They did that all with state money. They didn't add any local money, and they settled. Orange County settled for a 1.27% raise for the veterans. They added no local money. Orange County has a 20% plus fund balance. It's double the size of Palm Beach counties. Duval, they provided a 2% raise to veterans. They pitched in $3 million of local money. Hillsborough pitched in $5.8 million of local money, but they had 1,711 experienced teachers that only are receiving a $372 supplement. Dade and Broward settled early, and they didn't add local money, but what they did was they restructured their referendum supplements. So they did some restructuring to mitigate the compression that the state was causing. But they don't have $10,000 supplements. Their supplements are much less. And we looked at that. It didn't really make sense for us, because the bulk of our money, $90 million, is going to the nearly 8,000 teachers that get that $10,000 supplement. So that didn't work here in Palm Beach. So Polk and Volusia are at impasse, and we're trying to avoid impasse. But again, I think this is a fair deal in the current economic situation, including the governor's executive order. The governor's executive order also included a lot of responsibilities that we re-engage and provide more services to these students, which we're working on. So I hope you guys would reconsider, and we will go back to the board and affirm that this is the best we can do.
All right. Mr. Burke, one of the things I would like to mention, though, is you mentioned the 27 million, was put in the fund balance as a result of savings that existed from this year, from actions you took. I just as a matter of reference, go back and look at the past 3 or 4 years of fund balance contributions. They were double-digit contributions even then. So this is not an anomaly that we're putting in 27 million this year, because we put in 20 plus in double digits in the past 3, 4 years into the fund balance. So that's part of our practice, except for this year, from what we understand, and you're telling us that it came from savings as a result of COVID and cutting departments, I think, 10% or something like that.
I understand when you look at the fund balance and you say 200 million, that's a big number. But our fund balance was right in line with the state average fund balance. We were like at 9.85% the last time the state compiled all the numbers, and we were just below, say 10%. We're about 10% fund balance. One payroll for our district is nearly $60 million with benefits. So our board contingency reserve is $66 million. That's the piece of fund balance that's truly available for an emergency. Those other components are assigned, and some of them are non-spendable. But I guess my point is 10% fund balance that's actually less than is recommended. The county government, Palm Beach County, has a 15% reserve. The state, pre-COVID, had a 15% reserve. If I was following the Government Finance Officers Association's recommendations, I would have at least 15% in reserve. I would have enough money to run the district for 2 or 3 months, ideally. We're not even close to that. So I'm not going to apologize for putting the district trying to get us in a healthy position where we have a good credit rating and we can borrow money cheaply when needed. And we've built at it coming out of the last Great Recession, where we had a dip in fund balance, and we've slowly kind of tried to build that back up. It's good financial management. Now, we're in this for the long term, and we're trying to do the best we can this year. And we have definitely moved off our position, which was the only thing we would be spending this year was the state's money, for teacher salaries. So we have moved, and 3.5% is what represents we've had basically 3% raises for the past 5 years. Now, if you were a highly effective teacher, you did a little better the last couple of years, but this is right on par. It's equal to that. So I would think most people would understand it in this climate.
Well, and our position is, we do have monies available in this year's budget to do what we're asking. I mean, it's not like the money is not there, it's not available. It is available. It's just that there's a choice to decide not to use it for that. And it doesn't
It's an
exhaust.
informed, educated choice.
Right.
If we left the management of the district's finances to our unions each year, we would not be sitting here today, probably. Seriously.
Not if it was us. Not if it was us.
Okay.
That wouldn't be the case.
Okay.
And we just showed that by our proposal. That's why we put the 2% off, because we
All
wanted
right.
to wait and see.
Well, I don't want to get.
I think
maybe I'm
at
getting
this point,
frustrated.
we need to get back to the board. We would like you to give serious thought to our offer. Impasse is the last thing we want, but if we have to get there, if we have to be there to keep this district financially solvent and save jobs, then maybe that's where we need to go. It's certainly not where we want to go, but so we'll get you some dates for January.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.